The Oromo Gadaa System versus the Imperial Deep State of Ethiopia. Since 2018, Ethiopia's current crisis is often explained as ethnic conflict. But that explanation is too shallow. What is happening beneath the surface is far more fundamental. It is a collision between two completely different ways of organizing power, society and the state. On one side stands the Gadaa system, an indigenous, Oromo system of governance built on rotation, consensus, and generational accountability. On the other side stands what many scholars describe as the Imperial Deep State, a centralized political structure that has survived emperors, military juntas, and modern political parties. From the Oromo Youth Uprising of 2018 to the approach of the 2026 elections, Ethiopia has not been experiencing a transition. It has been experiencing a structural confrontation. This documentary explores that confrontation, how it plays out in politics, security, urban development, elections, and ultimately, the question of self-determination. 1. Gadaa, an indigenous democratic order. Long before modern constitutions, the Oromo developed one of the most sophisticated democratic systems in human history. The Gadaa system is not merely a tradition. It is a constitutional order. It organizes society through time, not territory. Power rotates every 8 years, and no individual or group can monopolize authority. Leadership passes from one generational group, called a luba, to the next. 5 governing parties rotate power cyclically, meaning the same party governs only once every 40 years. At the center of this system is the Oromo Gadaa. He is not a king. He is a chairperson, accountable, removable, and bound by law. Ultimate authority rests with the Gumi Gayo, a general assembly held every 8 years where laws are reviewed, leaders evaluated, and grievances heard. This is governance without permanence, power without inheritance, authority without absolutism. In 2016, UNESCO recognized the Gadaa system as intangible cultural heritage, not as folklore, but as a living democratic institution. 2. The Imperial Deep State, power that survives regimes. Opposing Gadaa is not one government, but a structure. The Imperial Deep State refers to a continuous system of centralized power rooted in monarchy, militarization, and bureaucracy that has survived regime change after regime change. From Emperor Menelik II to Haile Selassie, from the Derg military junta, from the EPRDF to the Prosperity Party, the ideological core remains the same: a strong center, weak regions, and a singular national identity. This project began with imperial expansion in the late 19th century. What Oromo historians call the Menelik Project, Oromo lands were cleared. Communities were displaced. Finfini became Addis Ababa. Each subsequent regime modernized the method, not the objective. The monarchy used landlords and conquest. The Derg used villagization and force. The EPRDF used development plans. The Prosperity Party uses mega projects and security committees. The deep state does not disappear. It adapts. 3. 2018. The Qeerroo shock. In 2018, the system cracked. The Qeerroo and Koree, Oromo youth inspired by Gadaa age grades, rose up. They protested land grabs. They rejected humiliation. They mobilized millions. The Addis Ababa master plan became the flashpoint. Its expansion threatened to displace millions of Oromo farmers. The uprising forced a political collapse. Prime Minister Haile Mariam resigned. Abiy Ahmed rose to power. For a moment, history seemed to bend. Political prisoners were freed. Exiles returned. Hope surged. But the structure beneath remained intact. 4. Medemer, unity or reconfigured centralization. Prime Minister Abiy introduced Medemer, synergy, as a new national philosophy. On the surface, it promised unity, but structurally, it shifted power back to the center. Medemer emphasizes civic nationalism over multinational federalism, central coordination over regional autonomy, mega projects over local consent. Where Gadaa rotates power, Medemer concentrates it. Where Gadaa governs through consensus, Medemer governs through vision. Critics argue Medemer is not synthesis. It is reconfiguration, a softer language for an older centralizing impulse. 5. Shadow governance, Koree Nageenyaa. As political space narrowed, a shadow structure emerged. The Koree Nageenyaa, or Security Committee, operates outside courts and parliament. According to reports, arrests are decided in meetings, not courtrooms. Detentions happen without warrants. Political opposition is treated as security threat. Elders have been killed. Opposition figures eliminated. Gadaa institutions undermined. Here, the state does not debate Gadaa. It prosecutes it. 6. Urbanization as dispossession. Nowhere is this conflict clearer than in urban development. Corridor projects, airport cities, smart cities. These are presented as modernization. But on the ground, they mean forced evictions, demolished homes, cleared farmland. Projects like the Abu Zera Airport City are not neutral infrastructure. They are tools for reconfiguring space, population, and control. Development arrives. Indigenous stakeholdership disappears. Symbols are co-opted. Gadaa City is built, while Gadaa leaders are silenced. 7. 2026 elections. Democracy or digital wall. As Ethiopia approaches the 2026 elections, legitimacy is collapsing. A new digital registration system is introduced. Email requirements, digital birth records, phone-based withdrawals. Opposition parties warn this system will exclude rural populations and enable coercion. Meanwhile, Oromia is at war. Amhara is at war. Tens of thousands are dead. An election without peace is not democracy. It is performance. 8. The Crossroads. Reform or self-determination. Oromia now faces an existential choice. One path argues, Ethiopia can still be reformed through genuine federalism and decentralization. The other argues the system is unreformable, that only external self-determination can secure Oromo survival. Both paths are risky, but the status quo is no longer sustainable. Conclusion: this is not simply about elections. It is not simply about ethnicity. It is about political architecture. Gadaa offers a vision of democracy rooted in time, accountability, and balance. The Imperial Deep State offers control, permanence, and uniformity. Ethiopia's future depends on which architecture prevails. Until the state learns to treat federalism not as a threat, until development begins with consent, until indigenous democracy is seen as strength, not danger, the cycle of protest, repression, and conflict will continue. This is not a crisis of unity. It is a crisis of design. Before we wrap up, here is the deep dive conversation over this matter.
So today we're looking at, well, a collision.
And not a small one.
Not at all. We're talking about a huge structural collision between two massive political architectures in Ethiopia.
That's right.
You've got a stack of reports here covering, 2018 all the way up to the election in June 2026. And the core argument is that this isn't just ethnic friction.
No, it's much deeper. The research really frames this as a chessboard with two totally different players. On one side, you have the Gadaa system, which is this indigenous sort of horizontal democracy.
Yeah.
And on the other, you have what analysts call the Imperial Deep State, vertical, centralized, classic top-down control.
So our mission today is to really unpack why these two just can't seem to coexist. Let's start with Gadaa. UNESCO lists it as intangible heritage, which is significant, but how does it actually work as a government?
It's incredibly sophisticated. It's the Oromo people's traditional social system, but the key takeaway really is the math. It runs on a super strict 8-year cycle.
An 8-year cycle.
Exactly. There are 5 parties, the Shanaan, Gadaa, Oromo, and leadership just rotates between them like clockwork.
So it's kind of like a term limit.
It's stronger than a term limit.
Yeah.
In a lot of other systems, a leader can just, change the constitution to stay in power.
Right.
Gadaa enforces a generational transfer. You do your 8 years, and you are done. The leader, the Abba Gadaa, he's more of a chairman than a king.
And the notes also mention a general assembly, the Gumi Gayo. What's that? A parliament.
Think bigger. The sources describe it as radical inclusivity. I mean, theoretically, every single voice is allowed to be heard. It's all bottom up.
Okay, so that's player one. Horizontal, cyclical. Who's on the other side of that table?
The Imperial Deep State. The literature traces this all the way back to the Menelik project in the late 19th century. It's a military bureaucratic complex built for one thing, the survival of the central state. It's all about centralization.
And these two forces just slammed into each other. In 2018, you had that huge youth movement, the Qeerroo.
Which actually takes its name from a Gadaa age grade.
Right. They topple the old regime, Abiy Ahmed comes in, and the world is cheering.
But here's the paradox. The new administration brings in this doctrine called Medemer, or synergy.
Synergy. Sounds positive. Coming together.
On paper, yes, but the analysis here suggests that while it talks about unity, it acts as a centralizing model.
How so?
Well, the argument is that Medemer pushes for a civic nationalism that sees a decentralized system like Gadaa as a threat. It's the difference between, say, integration and assimilation. Gadaa is about local self-determination. Medemer is about top-down synergy.
And this isn't just, a philosophical debate. The reports get really dark when they discuss the Koree Nageenyaa.
No, this is where it gets very real. The Koree Nageenyaa is identified as a shadow security committee. The reports link it directly to extrajudicial acts that just bypass the courts entirely.
The most jarring example was the 2021 massacre of the Qeerroo elders. I read that a few times.
It's unbelievable.
They were killed while performing sacred Gadaa rites.
Yes. It sends a message that is just chilling. That the indigenous peace-building system is being physically targeted by the state.
Wow.
And you see this in the landscape, too. The corridor development project in Addis Ababa, it's all framed as smart cities, as progress.
But the Oromo sources are calling it fast-track dispossession.
Exactly. If you bulldoze a cultural site to build a skyscraper and secure central control, is that modernization? Or is it erasing indigenous roots?
Which brings us right to the deadline, June 1st, 2026. The election. And there's this controversy over the registration system.
Digital line, yeah.
Specifically needing an email address, I have to play devil's advocate a bit, in 2026, is asking for an email really a conspiracy?
In, say, London or New York, no. But in rural Ethiopia, it's a huge barrier. The opposition is calling it a digital wall.
A digital wall.
Look, when you have millions in rural areas with limited literacy, let alone tech access, requiring a digital footprint disenfranchises them. It just does.
So the question becomes, is it an election or is it a selection?
That's the fear. It's creating this standoff. One side says the Federation is reformable. The other is pushing for independence because they feel the whole system is rigged.
It really feels like a fundamental incompatibility.
I think so. If the state can't embrace an indigenous democratic system like Gadaa without seeing it as an existential threat, then how does this cycle of conflict ever break?
It leads us with a really heavy question to walk away with. Does modernity, as this new doctrine defines it, actually require the destruction of tradition?
That is the question of the decade.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.